I'm Paige Ouimet. I'm an associate professor here at the Kenan-Flagler Business School. And today I want to talk to you a bit about my research work looking at wages at young firms. So we know young firms pay lower wages. In fact, average wages at young firms are nearly 30% lower compared to wages at their more established peers. And this is important if we put it into the context of the fact that young firms disproportionately account for new job creation in the United States. And as such, we care a lot about the wages at these new firms. So how should we think about this? Well, one idea that's been proposed is that we know young firms are more likely to be financially constrained. In other words, they're just likely to not have enough cash to be able to fund everything they want to do. And that could have implication for wages. It could mean that they're unable to match the wages that are being granted by their more established peers. And if that's what's going on, it's important to know because it will have implications for the ability of the firm to both attract and retain high-quality talent. Now, another idea that's been proposed is that young firms may just have what we could think of as low-quality jobs. So it may mean that they just always underpay their workers. And if that's going on, that's also important to be aware of because that may mean that we should be less concerned about this new job creation that's occurring at these types of firms if they're just always underpaying their employees. So in this setting, we're trying to investigate these questions, and this is joint work with Tanya Babina at Columbia, Wenting Ma at the University of Massachusetts, Christian Moser, also at Columbia, and Rebecca Zarusky at the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. And what we do is we decompose this wage gap into two key components. And so the first thing we document is that young firms disproportionately employ workers who are permanently lower paid. So put simply, what this means is that the jobs that are being created at young firms tend to be jobs that require less skill. And as such, they're able to fill them with workers that just have less skill and thus, on average, earn lower wages. And actually, this accounts for nearly 2/3 of that wage gap that I talked about earlier. The other key finding we have is that young firms are more likely to be inherently lower paying firms. So this is a little more conceptually difficult. So I think the best way to motivate this would be just think about the distribution of firms that are being born in a given year. There's going to be some really high quality firms. And so those are going to be the firms with a lot of profits. If you have a lot of profits, you can pay higher wages, you have more surplus to share, and you're also more likely to survive into older age. On the other hand, there's going to be some lower quality firms. They're not going to have the profits to be able to share with their workers, and they're more likely to die younger. And so now let's resample the distribution of firms, let's say at 10 years of age. And what we're going to find there is that a lot of the low quality at birth firms are already going to have died, and they're no longer going to be in that sample. So what we're going to see is that firms 10 years of age or older are skewed towards this higher quality distribution. And so this is distinct from suggesting there's this firm wage-age relationship, because this is entirely driven by selection. And if we look at the subset of surviving firms over time, this doesn't predict a change in wages. And in fact, if we control for these different heterogeneities, the fact that young firms are inherently hiring more workers that earn lower wages and are more likely to be a lower quality firm, if we control for both of these things, we no longer find that young firms pay lower wages. In fact, now they actually pay a premium, slightly higher level of wages for an equivalent worker. And so going back to those sort of earlier motivations, this suggests that even though we know young firms are more likely to be financially constrained, this is not showing up necessarily in their wages on average. It also means these aren't inherently low quality jobs. They're paying workers a fairer wage for the job that they're doing. And instead, this is more likely to be compensation for what we refer to as unemployment risk. So we know young firms are more likely to go bankrupt relative to their more established peers, and if the company you're working for goes bankrupt, this is likely to entail a period of unemployment on your part That's sort of a risk you would have to take on as an employee of these firms, and in return you would expect slightly higher compensation consistent with our results. So if you want to read more about this work, please look at the link below, which has the full paper.